Welcome to the pursuit of being a stand-up leader. I'm Jared Whitman, and I'm here with Nicki Knecht, a bookkeeper. And per our conversation last week, we talked about accounting, John and I did. And right now, we're going to talk about bookkeeping and sprinkle in a little accounting in our conversation. I'm really excited to talk to Nicki about the whole process. I'm excited to have you along for the ride as all of us are just growing to become a better version of ourselves and pursuing being a stand-up leader in the field and out there in the world, and just people helping people become the best versions of themselves. I think it's very exciting. So
super exciting.
Nicki, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
My pleasure.
I'm
Thanks
very
for having
excited
me.
because I don't know very much about accounting. So, and I'm a business leader, a business owner.
There you go.
And I just know accounting is very important based on the things that I've learned so far.
It is important, definitely important.
How
yes.
long have you been an accountant? Like, how long have you been in this field?
I started the business 15 years ago. So my background is actually in IT consulting, but there was a lot of changes and moving parts going on 15 years ago, and I found myself in need of a little bit of change, and this is where I landed.
And numbers are your thing.
They are my thing. I always loved math.
Okay.
Always loved math, and yeah, it makes sense to me. Not everybody's superpower, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So thank you for taking one for the team.
Yep.
Oh, what are some of the basics a business owner needs to understand when it comes to accounting?
I think when it comes to the basics, a business owner just needs to know their numbers. So I think more specifically, they need to understand how to read a profit and loss statement and what it's telling them,
Okay.
as well as a balance sheet.
Okay.
I mean, those would be the two key reports when it comes to accounting. And when you get all of your numbers into one place in your accounting software, whatever that may be, those would be the first two things to look at and understand.
So what types of accounting softwares are out there? Okay, let me rephrase that because that's kind of a loaded question, I'm sure, or a vague question. What are some of your favorite accounting softwares, and have you run across any accounting softwares that you don't like, and why don't you like them?
We only use QuickBooks, and more just QuickBooks Online even. In fact, we are down to, of the 65 to 70 clients that we've got, only one customer now is left using QuickBooks Desktop.
Okay.
So QuickBooks Online is certainly become the way to go. For those that are considering migrating from desktop to online, there's definitely a learning curve that comes along with it.
Okay.
But, like anything, with a little bit of practice, you'll be able to get yourself around it just fine. And there are some features in there that are just so much better than desktop. So yeah, so like I said, to go back to answering your actual question, QuickBooks is really kind of the standard for small to medium businesses around here.
Okay.
There are other programs such as Xero, Wave, Sage. There's all sorts of other programs. Yeah, I'm going to stop myself right there. You can splice and chop that.
Oh, thank you so much for that. So you mentioned that QuickBooks Online, and I think a lot of businesses are going to an online subscription-based model. Mm-hmm. However, if a business is small and they have access, which for an example, for me, I have access to the desktop version, and I don't think I'm large enough for the online version. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? Or where was I going with that question? Curses.
I mean, if I might just start talking
Yeah, you should
here.
just start. Yeah, go for
So desktop, even just the basic desktop version,
it. Yeah.
doesn't provide you much with anything less or much more than the basic QBO version. So even within QuickBooks Online, QBO, there are different versions.
Okay.
So, I mean, in general, there's 4 different versions right now. They range anywhere from like $30 a month to $200 a month.
Right.
So, and the desktop version, I think now is maybe $300,
Okay.
give or take, right? And I was actually on the phone with a sales rep from Intuit a couple weeks ago, and he was saying that they are going to be discontinuing having new versions of desktop with the exception of the contractor version. They will continue to make revisions and updates to that,
Okay.
but they will be going away with all other versions of desktop.
Okay. Good to know.
So,
Something else you mentioned that just kind of got me thinking, like you said, a small to medium business could still benefit from QuickBooks as their accounting tool. At what point should a business consider moving away from QuickBooks as they continue to grow?
that's a really good question. One that I don't necessarily have the answer to because I really haven't used many other products. The largest company that I have done work for has had like 30 employees and, 2 million in gross revenues.
Okay.
So it's not like they're small, certainly medium, but, I would say definitely, it's not like Epic or American Family, they're not using
Right.
QuickBooks.
Yeah.
But as far as where that line might be, it might just be if there is a certain feature that just is not available in QuickBooks or in an Intuit program, that then maybe they'll have to go elsewhere.
Okay. Good to know. Can we talk about like the accounting department and what are the roles within that accounting department? Let's just start there, and I think there's going to
Okay.
be more questions that come.
I would say so. Typically, it's going to be the larger businesses that are going to need an accounting department.
Okay.
Because as a subcontracted accountant slash bookkeeper, we are the full department. We will do all the invoicing, the receivables. We'll enter the bills. We'll do the payables. We'll do payroll. But in larger companies, you're going to have a payroll administrator. You're going to have somebody responsible for accounts receivable and somebody responsible for accounts payable.
Yeah.
Again, where that size happens, I think is really just going to depend on, what, we've gotten to a point where this employee is tapped, so now it's time to start splitting roles.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Right now for small to medium businesses, and it depends on, because we've got clients that are cash-based, salons and restaurants or bars or whatever that don't have invoices that need to go out and received, right? And a lot of their payables are all on auto pay or just done on a credit card. So you don't need a separate person doing just those duties, right?
Yeah.
So we can do it all in that case.
So when a business comes to you to do the accounting, is that you and a team, or do you kind of wear all these hats? And
Well, I have a team.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate to have gotten to a point where I can have a team. I've got a team I can trust. There's me and 2 others right now, but I've got people waiting in the wings for when we get to the point where we can't handle anymore, you know?
I think that's really cool to allow someone to do what they love, to be in the position to bring someone on to help them do what they want to do and grow and be better. Hopefully all businesses can get to that point.
And as a leader,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of courage to have the ability to let go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And hand that over to your team, but giving yourself the ability then to be able to take a vacation. Like, it wasn't until within the past couple of years that I actually took a vacation without taking my laptop,
Okay.
you know?
Okay.
So it's super rewarding when you can get yourself to that point, be like, okay, I know my team can do this. Everything is going to be fine,
Yeah.
Just go and have some fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you willing to talk about that
Yeah.
experience a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I think, like, just as business owners, and I've seen it beyond just my own experience, that business owners don't let the people they've hired to do the jobs that they need to do, to do them or fail, and coach them and mentor them to get better and do the things that. So what kind of path did you take from this is my baby and here you go, here's a little bit of my baby that you're gonna carry and bring with you, and we're gonna grow this baby together. I don't know why I'm stuck on the baby thing, but
It is your baby. I mean, it's frightening, especially I'm a single mom. I mean, my kids are grown now, but 15 years ago, very young, and it's my livelihood, right? I can't screw this up. So then when you start bringing in other people to do the work that you have done, it's like, can this person do it as good as I can, right?
Yeah.
It's been interesting. So to answer your question, how I got there, first and foremost was coaching.
Okay.
Having to have people tell me, if you want to have any life at all outside of this, Nicki, you've got to start letting go. You've got to delegate, The other interesting thing that I heard along those lines was it's okay to have people on your team that can do stuff better than you.
Yes.
Right?
I 100% agree
Super,
with that. Yeah.
super interesting and really something to think about too, because I'm like, well, yeah, that would be pretty freaking sweet, right?
Yeah.
So I think, it was baby steps, right? In just letting a little bit go at a time. And it was even to a point where I, would have, like, my first team member gave them, you're responsible for these clients, but I didn't let the client know.
Okay.
Which I wouldn't say is not necessarily the right thing, nor is it the wrong thing. I just wasn't ready, because I didn't want to have them lose any faith.
Right.
And for me, my uncle told me time and time again, Nicki, you would be a fantastic salesperson. You got to be in sales. You got to be in sales. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I never wanted to do it to this day. I would say I wouldn't want to do sales. But the fact of the matter is, as a business owner, you have to.
Right.
But when it comes to making a sale, I don't change anything about myself, right? I come in, I sit here with holy jeans on, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't change a thing. And I'm like, this is KBS, this is how we work. You might see me with my hair up in a messy bun and sweatpants on someday. But that's just how I am, right? So I didn't put on this like salesy pitch or anything. I just came in, I sit down like I'm sitting in their living room, and we chat about bookkeeping, accounting, whatever.
Yeah.
So that was a really long-winded answer to the question about growing your team and letting go. And it's really just kind of, like I said, just baby steps and graduating to those moments, I guess.
Long with it is okay, because there's gold nuggets that can be picked up.
Yeah.
In
So that baby's
whatever.
graduated.
Yeah. Do you you're at the the end, not, the end of this process of, letting go a little bit. Do you wish you would have done that a little bit sooner, a little bit faster, or the pace at which you went?
You know what? It's interesting that you frame it that way, because I've had people tell me, you could have grown this so much faster. There's an infinite number of businesses out there that need bookkeeping help, da 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 da. And I've always said, you know what? I have never fallen back. Like my gross or my net income has never gone backwards, never once.
Yeah.
So it's always just been this slow and steady growth. And for me, obviously not everybody's going to be the same. That worked for me.
Yeah.
I know me well enough to know that had I grown any quicker, I probably would have failed.
Okay.
Because I'll drop balls.
Right. Yeah.
I'm human. I will forget something, I'll miss something, and it'll get effed up. Yeah. And I didn't want to take that kind of a risk just to grow faster.
Yeah.
I've been comfortable in my growth, and it's worked for me.
Cool. I like that you talked about being fully yourself, like getting out of the W-2 market in like this, strict, like this is how you are at work and this is how you need to be. And now you're just
me,
yourself, mm-hmm. which is so cool to just fully be yourself in a professional atmosphere. And then I call it like jiving on the universe with other like-minded people right. who are themselves.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling, and I'm just experiencing this because I'm so used to, poor management and not people, people not, putting other people in, they're just greedy and whatnot. So and there's like, these are the rules, and you can't have any pudding if you don't eat your meat, whatever, that type of stuff. That was I'm going off on a tangent. I'm
following you. I'm totally following you.
But I just think it's so cool to see other people and connect with other people that are just totally themselves and not afraid to get all wild and crazy. I get all wild and crazy sometimes, or I go off on tangents like I'm doing right now. Oh gosh. But I'm just like more myself than I've ever been, and I've never experienced life the way I'm experiencing life right now, and it's amazing. Yeah. And it's very exciting to connect with another like yourself. Mm-hmm. And I know I thanked you before.
I thought you were going to say something about Knecht.
Because you're like, I was there. That was too much. I'll edit that in post. We should bring it back to accounting. I got off on a tangent.
No, that's okay. But I think what you were saying, though, about being yourself, that still took even some time for me.
Yeah.
In my email signature,
yes.
So my email signature is lady in the streets, which I am not. Freak in the spreadsheets, which I am.
I laughed out loud.
It was that whole thing. I've got a coach in New Zealand, and that I heard from a group coaching thing, and I'm like, I have to steal that. Like that is brilliant, right? And as it turns out, I mean, there's like, a client sent me a coffee mug with that, so it's been around. I can't claim that as my own, but I have run into, most people are like, oh my gosh, Nicki, that is so awesome. That is so awesome, and I'd love to hear that. But I have run into a couple of people like, are you sure you want to have that on there?
Right,
you could offend some people. And I said, you know what? If I offend some people, I apologize.
Right.
But that is my first line of defense then. Because if that offends somebody, certainly not done on purpose, but then we're just not a good fit for each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's a great first line of defense. And quite frankly, I'm in the process of kind of redoing my website so that the content in there, while the content will still be what it is right now, it's going to be spoken in a bit of a different language.
Right, yeah, more yourself.
Yeah.
Your personality, your characteristics. I think that's so cool and also a little scary, I think.
Yep.
Because now you're really putting yourself
Yes.
out there, and I think one of the things I struggle with as a business owner, like I'm a big guy and I get all jovial.
Sure.
Yeah,
Happy?
just about life and what I'm doing, and sometimes I get really animated, and that a lot of people are unsure about if a big guy that gets
Right.
animated. But
Right.
if I'm not who I'm supposed to be, then I can't connect with the people I'm supposed to connect with. And if I'm not able to connect with them, then I can't help them grow or get better or connect the dots to the next step.
And you won't be able to let yourself grow.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah. And we only have one life. We're born and we die, and we have to fill that dash. And I want to be the best version that I can be when it's time for me to leave this world.
Yep.
And yeah, I think we're off topic on accounting, but I think we're just in this weird point in history where it's more focused or becoming more focused on the people and the people side of things and people growing and the amount of information that we have at our fingertips and the amount of abilities people have to connect with other like-minded people and the amount of creativity that's happening. It's just the coolest thing.
I agree.
It's so
100%. Yep. All right, now I suppose we can get
let's get back to the
if
accounting.
We must.
God. I lost my place in the. Let's see. You talked about the basics of accounting, the balance sheet and the profit or loss statement. If someone doesn't know anything about those things, can you kind of talk a little bit about what they are, what they do, and what data they kind of take in or show?
Yep. So the profit and loss statement shows the summary of your income and your expenses. And if you've heard the term chart of accounts, it's your chart of accounts. So you might have, product income versus services income, and then your accounts like utilities or rent and subcontractors or whatever. Your chart of accounts are those items, and those as a summary are in the profit and loss statement, those accounts. Okay. The balance sheet has your assets, liabilities, and equity. So going back to accounting like 101, your assets equals your liabilities plus equity. So those three types of accounts are not on the profit and loss statement, they are on the balance sheet.
Okay.
Do you want me to go into a little bit more detail?
Yes, please.
Okay. Assets are typically physical things that you own. So a company vehicle. Maybe you own the building that the office is in. Or maybe you need large camera equipment and stuff to do your work, okay? Anything that is, again, this is a typical rule in general, that costs you over $2,500 is an asset. Those items, so because when you purchase them, because it's not an expense, people are like, well, then how do I get the deduction? Right? So assets are depreciated. So you've heard of depreciation. So assets get depreciated over time. That time can vary, but that's how you take your deduction on larger purchases.
So then, if a piece of equipment costs $2,500, how is that How is that depreciated over time? Is there a certain amount of time that gets attached to a certain number?
There is, well, first of all, there's different depreciation methods,
Okay.
which like a tax accountant would best be able to tell you what the proper method is.
Yeah.
And then it's basically in your mind, how long do you think this piece of equipment will be useful?
Okay.
And when might you want to be replacing it?
Gotcha.
So let's say you're going to be like, 5 years. You want to then have it fully depreciated and take all of that expense over. So like the full amount, $2,500 divided by 5 years, you'll take a $500. Your depreciation will be $500 each year.
Okay. Is this, and you kind of said talk to your tax person, but is it more beneficial to, when is it more beneficial to kind of take the bulk of the depreciation up front, and is that an option versus kind of depreciating it over a length of time?
Yes, there is a method that front loads the depreciation. So where you do take a larger amount earlier on, and then it can get smaller as you go. But again, I know enough to talk about depreciation, but to, do suggestions and what the actual formulas are and all that jazz.
Variables.
Right.
Every business is different.
Right.
That makes sense. What are some of the struggles you've come across in accounting when it comes to small business? So let me rephrase that question. What kinds of struggles have you seen business owners experience when it comes to their accounting?
Separating personal versus business expenses.
Let's dig into that because I struggle.
Being there 15 years ago, right? We've all been there at one point. So yeah, it's hard to start a business and not rob Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
So I think as far as when it comes to us doing the books, then it's constantly a question. Is this a business expense or is it personal? You see Piggly Wiggly, right? Well, did they maybe go there and buy an office supply or whatever? Or
right.
Was it really just your groceries?
Yeah.
Right? So that definitely makes it more difficult for us. What I would suggest to those people, to yourself, Jared, would be, even if it is paying yourself $100 a week or something just to transfer some money from your business to your personal account so that temptation is not as much there, right?
Okay.
As an LLC, you can take as many draws as you want. As an LLC, there is no payroll. I mean, it's just a draw.
Right.
So theoretically, there is no difference in paying out of the business account versus your personal, because we'll just book it to owner draw anyway. But it's just a good practice to make a habit of.
Right.
And it just keeps it cleaner.
Yeah. You've talked about owner's draw, and I know that that's pulling money out of the business checking account. If I bring money back into the checking account from another account, what is that considered, and how does that kind of relate to?
Well, so owner's draw, I'm going to pause myself because I swore I had muted this. I apologize. I know. I apologize.
Geez. No, you're good.
Okay. So going back to the balance sheet, owner's draws, owner's investments or owner injections, those are equity accounts. So we had talked about the assets, and then there's liabilities, which we can come back to. But those transactions hit equity accounts.
Okay.
So equity is basically either the money that you take out of the business or that you put in the business. And there can be some other things too, but in general,
Okay.
that is equity. And that is how those are tracked.
Okay.
So then when it comes to liabilities, is it okay that I interrupt you there?
Yes, of course.
Liabilities are what you owe.
Okay.
So as your transactions that you pay for on a credit card, as those grow until you pay the credit card, that is hitting a liability account. A credit card is actually a liability.
Right.
And then obviously loans. You take out a small loan just for cash flow purposes, or maybe you have just a line of credit account. Those would be liability accounts.
Okay.
So
Can we talk about W-2 employees
we can.
versus 1099 subcontractors?
Sure.
Obviously, there's variables depending on the size of the business, what type of business, the product service, but what are some of the benefits of having a W-2 employee use my business as an example. If I want to bring on employees, are there any benefits to having a W-2 employee versus a 1099 contractor, or
So first of all, it's important to know that the IRS actually has kind of like a barometer kind of tool,
Okay.
right? Like, does this person work this many hours? Like, I don't know what the questions are off the top of my head, but it's basically a yes/no flow chart kind of thing that helps you determine, no, this person needs to be a W-2 person, or this person can be a 1099.
Okay.
So there's very much rules for that. For example, if you were to, let's say, start with a 1099 person, you can't necessarily say, I need you to be at this location at this time.
Okay. Interesting.
Because as a 1099er, you're going to work whenever you want to,
Right.
from wherever you want to.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's like the biggest one that I'm always trying to explain to clients is, I take this little test because I really think you should not be 1099ing this person and should have them on as a W-2.
Okay.
Pros and cons of both. I mean, a W-2 employee, I don't want to call it control, obviously, but you have the control of, I want you working from 8 to 5.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
But then there's costs involved. So you've got a W-2 employee, you're paying the payroll tax on them.
Right.
So state and federal unemployment, as well as the federal withholding, your FICA Medicare and Social Security matching.
Yep.
1099s, you don't have the control as to when they should and shouldn't be working.
Right.
But they're responsible for their, the computer that they're going to use. They're responsible for their insurance. They're, all those expenses that you don't have to worry about.
Right. Okay. That's good. You talked about the taxes, the withholdings, and all that stuff. How often do those tax codes change, and what types of resources do you utilize to stay on top of those tax codes?
So we don't do taxes.
Oh, okay.
We do everything that leads up to tax time.
Okay.
Okay. So we just make sure that everything is in a nice little package to hand off to the tax accountant.
Okay. It's good to know. This is not taxes, Jared. It's accounting.
Well, it's right. I mean, so there's the tax accountant, right? Mm-hmm. So
what's the difference between accounting and bookkeeping?
Well, the words if you were to Google that exact thing, which I have done,
Okay.
they're totally interchangeable.
Okay.
Clients would have called me and do call me their accountant. And I'm kind of like, no, 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 I am not. So I did. I Googled what is the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper, and it's nothing. I shouldn't say nothing, but extremely minimal, right?
Okay.
So oftentimes if, we come to a point where it's like, we might have to, defer that question to your tax accountant.
Okay.
Because there's just certain things. Sales tax is another one. Sales tax, super gray area.
So what resources do you utilize when you're kind of staying on top of accounting, staying on top of bookkeeping, staying on top of all that stuff?
Like as far as how our practice works.
Yeah.
I mean, so QuickBooks has a lot of features that we utilize. So, for example, our whole workflow for every single client is stored right within QuickBooks.
Okay.
So, for example, we've got a client that might have 2 checkings accounts, a savings account, and 3 credit cards. Especially, it's important for me to be documenting as much as possible as far as what each client entails,
Right.
because it's easy to miss something.
Right.
So we've got this whole workflow where I can assign a team member to a client, and then have like the project itself might be, monthly reconciliation, right? But then I can do individual tasks then. So to wrap up every month, we need to log into Square and do this journal entry, and we need to make sure all the payroll is booked from this payroll provider, and we need to make sure that this checking account at this bank is reconciled, that this credit card from bank number 1, 2, and 3 are reconciled.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate enough that as a bookkeeping firm that has multiple clients, we can easily identify and document everything that needs to be taken care of either each week, every other week, every month,
Yeah.
every quarter even. So like we've got some clients that have to file sales tax monthly, some are quarterly, others are annually. So I can just have a recurring project annually to file sales tax just for this client.
Yeah.
So that's a super nice feature. And I could see something like that even being beneficial in a company in and of itself.
Is it like
right?
a CRM type of thing? Yeah, that's a cool feature. You talked about the process that you just talked about the process. Is that something that is specific to your profession, or have you kind of built this standard operating procedure over the course of the last 15 years, so then you're able to bring someone on and be like, this is how we do things.
Right.
This is how I do things, and this is how the company does things.
Yep. Yes. The second. So the latter of the two is, making it the KBS way, right? We also kind of have like a preferred chart of accounts.
Okay.
Oftentimes if we get a client that has it established and, might be kind of married to that, fine, we'll stick with it.
Yeah.
But otherwise we might tweak it as well. But we definitely have our way of doing things. And so far it's worked for us,
For the chart of accounts, how do you have that set up? And obviously there's variables, and we talked about that, but like, what are the main chart of accounts that you like to utilize? And I want to talk more like specifically how they're named, because I think that kind of, I for one get into like I've done this. I've done the spreadsheets and it's named a certain way, and now I have to move over to QuickBooks, which I'm slowly doing. And now I'm like, can I name them still the same things, or is it better to have the names, or do I need to have account numbers attached to those chart of accounts?
So there isn't necessarily hardcore rules to a chart of accounts. Right. Your chart of accounts, like I said, that's what that's what plays into your profit and loss in your balance sheet. And you need, especially your profit and loss, so your income and your expenses, cost of goods sold, you need it to tell you a story that's going to make sense to you.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what somebody else, especially another business owner, thinks it says. As long as it tells Jared the correct story, that's really all that matters. And as far as the names of accounts, that doesn't matter. When using account numbers, I know that some tax accountants prefer it, others don't care.
Okay.
So I think it's whatever tax tool that they are using on their end where it might matter. There are certainly some GAAP, generally accepted accounting practices. Okay, so there are some certain general rules when it comes to numbers, account numbers.
Okay.
4,000s are your income account, 5,000s are your cost of goods sold, 6,000s are your expenses. And then your assets, liability, and equities are above there, 1, 2, and 300, the 3,000s or whatever. So,
This is just a
minimal, right?
Okay.
But yes, that is a general rule.
It's a dumb question, but like, how did they? Was it just like from
I
way
have
back
not
when?
done my history of chart of accounts numbering research.
That's okay. It's very low on the totem pole.
That's a great question.
Someone put it in place, like Socrates or something.
Exactly.
This is how the chart of accounts is going to go. They're going to be numbered like this. Socrates did not sound like that. Let's talk about accounts receivable and accounts payable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like when it comes to invoicing, like I guess what's a good workflow for business owners to kind of streamline invoicing and payment collection? I should really keep my questions down to one question. I know I'm like throwing a lot of stuff.
Okay.
About that, yeah.
As far as streamlining your invoicing, it first of all depends on how you invoice. So, example number 1, I do retainer pricing. So it's the same price every month. Client knows exactly what they're paying. I know exactly what I'm getting. So I have set up recurring invoices for the client. So technically, I rarely even have to touch invoicing because QuickBooks Online will create the invoice and send it out on the date that I specify automatically.
Okay.
Yes, I said automatically. If you charge by the hour, okay, on projects, I would definitely recommend some sort of time tracking tool that integrates with QuickBooks so that when you are doing the invoices, you can quickly bring in the hours and then it will multiply it out by the rate or whatever. Now there is QuickBooks Time that obviously integrates quite lovely. I'm not here to promote anything,
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you are at all.
But it does work really slick.
Okay.
Because, every once in a while we will do some hourly stuff and it takes like no time then to generate an invoice. You just say, bring these hours in, send.
Have you run across any clients that, and maybe this question doesn't apply to you, but that have had to collect payments, and how can they navigate that type of conversation?
Doing collections?
Yeah. Do you have any experience with this?
When I was a kid, I've got history of business owners in my family. My grandfather had a family business. My dad was on his own. I've had aunts and uncles having their own businesses. But I do remember having to go on a collections call with my dad one time. And he literally went to the client, walked inside, and was like, "Where's my money?"
Okay.
Now, if that worked for him, great, I hate having to make those calls.
Yeah.
Like, it's the worst. So I do start with, QuickBooks has some built-in features where you can set it up, again, to automatically, after, if after this much time, if it's not received, then they're going to send a reminder. And again, after so much more time, a reminder. I will be the first to admit I have cobbler's kid syndrome when it comes to my own bookkeeping. So I get extremely embarrassed when I know that I've received payments physically. They're in my bank account, but I have not received them into QuickBooks.
Okay.
And my poor clients will get the reminder and they're like, "Nicki, I swear I paid this," or "I thought I was on ACH," or "What's going on?" And I'm like,
Technology.
well, no, I eat crow, man. That's me. I can't keep up with my own bookkeeping. I'm so busy taking care of you guys.
As it should be.
But QuickBooks, aside from having the reminders, it also has an ACH feature.
Okay.
And I really do sound like I'm here to promote QuickBooks, and that's, not why I'm here. But it does have some great features where you can turn on, it has its own merchant account, so people could pay by credit card. But there's also just a feature where people can pay you simply by entering in their account and routing number.
Okay.
And it will plop right into your bank account. And because they're paying it through the invoice that was emailed to them,
Okay.
it will automatically get marked as paid.
Gotcha.
And I think they charge like 1% and no more than $10 per transaction or something like that.
Okay.
So
That's a nice feature.
that it is a nice feature, and it really does help because, these days people they don't want to write checks, or they want everything on a credit card or whatever. So if it's sitting there right in front of you on the computer screen, pay now.
Right.
It's just easy.
Yeah. Anything you can do to make things easier.
Right.
Which is probably why you're pushing QuickBooks.
Right.
Which is probably why you're not pushing QuickBooks, because it's just easier.
It's just all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about security and fraud when it comes to accounting? What have you run into in regards to small businesses experiencing that?
Yeah. Last year was really the first year that we have really seen it. And interestingly enough, not only did it happen to me, it happened for sure to 2 other clients, but one of them specifically on a really big scale. Like, I'm talking $80,000 in fraud. And what happened initially, you think about writing a check and putting it in the mail and trusting the U.S. Postal Service to get it from A to B, right? Just yesterday I was watching my friends run down the street chasing after a receipt. It's just a piece of mail. It can fly away, right? Somebody managed to get a hold of one of his checks and was able to duplicate the check.
Wow.
A blank check.
Wow.
Right? It had his signature on it. It had his routing number. It had his account number. Everything was right there. And people were literally writing checks with his signature.
Wow.
Right. $80,000. And not only just physical check, but you've got the routing and account number. So one of the other transactions was somebody paid their $20,000 Discover card bill.
Jesus.
All you need is a routing and account number.
Right.
So we saw a lot of it last year. And so this year, my big pitch really is just try to go to ACH as much as possible. Yeah, it might cost you $25 or $35 a month, right? Just to have the feature. But it's the safest thing to do.
Okay. That takes care of my next question. How to minimize risk in accounting.
Yeah. Well, I can add on to that.
Please do.
We obviously are trusted with the logins of a bunch of clients, right? And one thing I would recommend that I know the banks even prefer is a third-party login. So while a lot of people are just inclined to, okay, here's my bank login, what is preferred is a third-party login. So they tell their bank, I need you to set up a login for my bookkeeper.
Okay.
And the nicest thing about it is that if, God forbid, some fraud starts to happen, you can tell, you can tell if it came from this login, or if it didn't come from a login at all.
Right.
So I think that is really critical when hiring, outsourcing a bookkeeper to give them their own login.
Yeah. I'm glad you went that route. Can you talk about what makes an accounting professional stand out?
I think it's perspective. It was interesting. I was talking to a client the other day, and he's not fond of his current tax accountant. Okay. And I keep a list of CPAs that we work with and yada, yada, yada. So I'm like, well, I can forward this to you and, you can vet them as you wish. And he's like, I just want my Nicki as a tax accountant, so I'm not for everybody, right? So I think it's just perspective on what exactly are you looking for? Are you looking... I have learned accountants do things differently. Even though you think it would be very much cookie cutter, this is how you do this, they all do it differently. They want to see things, booked differently. So I think it's just, it's what feels right, which is why I say here's, 5 to 10 accountants. I enjoy working with all of them, but they might not be for you, right? And maybe some are more interested in certain industries, right? Like we really like this type of client. We're really good at we've got this niche.
Yeah.
I've got there's some accountants that they don't do S corps. So I don't send any S corps to them. It's just the LLCs.
Yeah.
What would be really great is, I think, those accountants that are very proactive in reaching out to the clients, like, halfway through the year. Hey, let's take a look at how you're doing so far. Do we need to do any strategic moves here? And then again, maybe come October just to see how things are going.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times small businesses are rushed, like all of a sudden at the end of the year, like, oh my God, I need to spend all this money quickly or whatever.
Right.
So I think just good proactive communication.
Besides good proactive communication, what advice would you give to up-and-coming accountants in growing their business or their book of clients, or how to interact? Do you have any tips, I guess, would you have for new accountants coming up? There's got to be some young folks that like numbers like you do.
Right? some other whack jobs out there.
Yeah, I don't know why they do it, but thank goodness they're there.
Let's see. Honestly, I think networking is important. When I first started, I joined a B&I group. B&I isn't for everybody, again, but it worked really, really good for me. So I think whatever kind of networking that you enjoy doing, and I hate networking, like still, even though I love people, I'm like an extroverted introvert. I
Yeah.
don't know what my problem is, but
I know what you mean.
I think it's just important to network, get out there in your community, and then eventually, all of a sudden, somebody in your community is going to know somebody out in Washington that needs help, you know, and that person's going to know somebody in Texas, and that's just how it happens slowly but surely.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on small businesses or small to medium businesses, business owners, on how they can stay on top of their accounting procedures if they're not working with a rock star like yourself?
Do it monthly, if not weekly.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest thing is because it's not their superpower and they're so focused on working working on building their business versus working in it,
Yeah.
or vice versa. You know what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
It's certainly the last thing that they think about doing
Okay.
because all they're doing is invoicing.
Right.
Get the money, get the money, get the money. But then they're not receiving it. And then their receivables are all jacked up. And then their clients are calling them saying, you've already billed me or paid this. So try and have like a financial Friday or something like that where it's just try and stay, I want to say regular, but that sounds weird too.
Right. No. Financial Friday. No, I really like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any other advice I mean, we covered a ton of information and went through a long history of your history and a little bit of my history and the history. We've talked a lot. We've talked about a lot of stuff. But do you have any other advice for business owners when it comes to accounting best practices or in general?
I think it would be to recognize where your strengths and weaknesses are. Know what you're good at. Be honest with what you love doing and the stuff that you hate doing and aren't good at doing and don't want to do. And when you can, hand it off to somebody where that is their superpower and let them do it.
That's really great advice.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't have any other questions.